Kip, what's up, man? It seems like it's been a couple of weeks since we did the Ask Me Anything together, but I got to tell you, before we even get into this today, I listened to the Ask Me Anything that you did this week or last week, rather,
The solo.
and you are getting good, man. I don't know if you feel like you are, but I
Yeah.
was listening. There was a couple that stood out in particular. It was the first question. Gosh, I thought I was going to remind you of these, and now I'm having a hard time remembering what the first and last question were. But man, you sounded so good. I'm like, he's getting this down. So I'm not sure you even need me anymore.
Yeah. Well, whatever. There's power in the conversation. And I appreciate it. I don't want to like downgrade the compliment. So I just felt, I don't know. It's so important, right?
Yeah, I
What we
mean, you're
talk
on.
about. And so I just feel like I'm just sharing my opinion based upon my own experiences and what's heartfelt, not manipulative or anything else. And so I
Your
just feel
lived
like I'm sharing
experience.
myself. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, it sounded good. You had it dialed, gave some good feedback. I wish I could remember what the two topics were. I'll have to look and see if
That
I
sounds
can, because
pretty impactful since you could remember it so well.
well, I remembered it for like 6 hours. Most things I remember for like 6 minutes. So consider
No, it's all
yourself
good.
consider yourself in the higher echelons of my memory.
Yeah, of Ryan Mickler's brain. 6
That's
hours.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. Cool, man.
All right, man. Well, let's get into some questions today.
Yeah, sounds great. So we're going to field questions from the Iron Council. To learn more, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. Currently closed. We'll open back up membership roughly around the middle of December.
Correct.
So join us then, or you guys can always join our Battle Ready program. And to learn more about that, go to orderofman.com/battle ready.
And the guys who do the Battle Ready program, they always maximize their Iron Council membership more effectively. So
yeah, they're ready.
yeah, if you're going to spend money on something, and it's an investment. I have a lot of people say, oh, you should just do it for free. There's a lot of reasons I don't. One, I'm a business. Two is, if it's for free, how much will you really value it? And three, there's other guys investing in themselves. Why are you special? So if you are going to spend some money on something and invest in something, if it's an investment, just like it would be in the stock market, you'd want to do the research. You'd want to be well-versed. You'd want to know what you're doing so that you can maximize your potential return. So that's where that Battle Ready program comes in.
Excellent. All right, Kevin Bovey, what does a future vision of yourself look like when you are good with exactly who and how you are right now? Every growth goal is based upon the person, the man, other people want me to become. I'm at the point where I don't give a shit what those other people want me to be, and I'm good with who I am.
I don't think that's true. I don't think you're good with where you are, because you wouldn't be asking this question if that was the case. You wouldn't be thinking about future vision. You wouldn't be thinking about what you want. Now, I get the sentiment. The sentiment is I'm not doing it for other people. And I acknowledge that. I appreciate and I agree with that. But to say that you're good with where you are right now, it's just not true, because you're asking this question.
Yeah. Well, and who would be? Like, I can't relate to it, but the reality of it is we're not perfect. There's so much work to be done, and there's fulfillment and purpose in achieving things. And so if we're complacent, we're like, I'm good where I'm at, then doesn't that lack fulfillment, you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think hope and optimism dies. I think there's a lot of frustration and anxiety and being complacent with where you are. That's been my own personal experience. So yeah. I think we need to set that as the groundwork. You're not really good with where you are, but you have your priorities straight, in that you don't want somebody else to dictate what you should be doing or what your future looks like. And that's exactly right. You shouldn't be letting other people dictate. Now, there are, contrary to popular opinion, there are some people whose opinion matters. Your spouse, her opinion probably matters. Kip, when it comes to doing this Ask Me Anything and running this business, your opinion about me and the way we're doing things, that matters to me. The guys who listen to the podcast or the guys who join the Iron Council, their opinion, it matters to me. But ultimately, I make the decisions I make because I think it's going to be what's best for what I'm after, which is trying to impact millions of men across the planet. And therefore, I need to take the way they feel about what we're doing into consideration so I can more effectively fulfill the mission. So I don't want to go so far down the rabbit hole where it's like, I don't care what anybody else thinks. And if my wife does, imagine saying this, if my wife doesn't like what I'm doing, then screw her. Like, really? Like, what was the point of getting married then, if that's the case? You know?
Yeah.
So
Or surrounding yourself around people. I mean, isn't that really what we talk about on this podcast? Surround yourself with people that uplift you.
yeah.
Said another way, care maybe about their opinions and their suggestions, not to the point that we're blinded or ignorant and we're not considering it for ourselves, but that's why I surround myself around great people, because they make me better by me considering their opinions and viewpoints.
Yeah. So a great example of that is what you told me before we hit record. What you told me about the event that you have, is that a secret? Should I not talk about that, or is
Oh, no,
that
no, it's
okay?
it's totally okay.
So you had mentioned that you are taking your executive team to Texas next weekend for Echelon Front with Jocko Willing, JP, all those guys for their muster. You clearly care about Jocko's opinion,
Totally.
because if you didn't care about his opinion, you wouldn't invest all that money, to maybe even tens of thousands of dollars with tickets and plane and airfare and hotels, and getting the executive team out there.
Totally. Yeah.
But here's what I would say to, what's the guy's name who asked this question?
Kevin.
So, Kevin, here's what I would say. It's not really a matter of whether or not you care what other people think. It's a matter of aligning your dreams and visions with the people who are going to help you achieve that in the best way possible. So, your wife should be on board with that. Friends should be on board with that. Colleagues, coworkers, mentors, coaches, guys on your battle team, because you're part of the Iron Council, they should be behind you and in support of that. And then if you're not, you can reevaluate. So, in the spirit of the question, what does your vision look like? I really don't know, because I don't know you, right? I don't know what you're after. I don't know what your hopes and your dreams and your desires are. I don't know what your fears are. I don't know what you're working to overcome. I don't know what tragedies or trauma you might be experiencing that's changing your worldview and your perception of life. I have no idea. And it's not really for me to decide, because then we get into the question of, am I doing this for Ryan, or am I doing this for me? So what I would encourage you to do is really sit down and spend some time thinking about who you want to be and how you want to show up. Maybe how these are prompts, how you want people to remember you. Again, it's not for them. It's just to give you a different context in which to view the way you're showing up. So how you want people to remember you. Here's another good prompt. What type of men do you look up to, and what characteristics do they espouse? Are they of integrity? Are they physically fit? Are they financially abundant? Are they passive? Are they more assertive? Start looking at these people. Maybe it's Jocko. You know, everything about Jocko's life is not something I want to emulate, but there's elements of his life that I think, man, this is somebody who has discipline. So I want to be a disciplined man. You know, it could be somebody who is John Lovell with Warrior Poet Society Network. This is somebody who's convicted in his beliefs. Maybe our beliefs don't always align, but I'm convicted. I want to be convicted like that guy. What did you say?
And thinks he's funny.
And thinks he's funny.
Yeah, he does think he's funny.
Well, he is the quintessential dorky dad. And John, I say that with all the love I have in my heart for you. And he knows it. He knows it.
Yeah.
So those are some prompts. And then ask yourself, who am I doing this for?
Yeah.
And here's another thing that you should consider. If this is morbid, but I think it's important to consider. Let's say you're talking about the kind of husband that you want to be. If, again, this is morbid, I'm just trying to give you some context. If your wife died tomorrow, would the kind of man that you want to be for her change? Because if it would change, then maybe that's not as deep as you need to go.
Yeah.
What kind of man do you want to be, regardless of whether or not you're married, regardless of whether or not people follow you, regardless of what people think of you? What is it at your core that drives you intrinsically and is not based on financial acumen, not based on public accolades, not based on arbitrary titles like husband or father, because those things could potentially go away. Employee, business owner, rich person, right? Those things could all go away. What are you left with? That's when you find out who you are.
Totally. I like, one of the benefits of the IC is the world shows up in our little ecosystem, right? Not little, but our big ecosystem, right? But it's little in the aspects of the world. And what I love is the natural progression of members that join the Iron Council. And I think it relates to Kevin's question here. Most guys join the Iron Council for who? For themselves.
For themselves, sure.
Right? They're like, hey, there's this area that I need to improve on, and the focus is myself. Now, it's not negative in the sense of like, hey, I'm going to improve myself so I can be a better dad and whatever. And then we get guys that are been in for 5 years, for 6 years, 7 years. If you ask those guys why they're there for other people. So Kevin, maybe you do have your stuff together more than me. Maybe you have everything dialed in and you're like, dude, like I don't have any goals because I'm dialed in. Well, the next step of that process is, what are you doing for other people? And are you growing your circle of impact? Because it's great that you have your stuff dialed in. How's your family? Got that, Kip. Check. Okay, great. How's your community? Got that. Check. Okay, how's your state? Right? That is the echelon of growth, is once we have things dialed in with us, we broaden our impact for the greater good. And so if you're struggling with, hey, I don't know what my vision is because everything's dialed in, then you pick a problem. Pick a problem at the state level, pick a problem at the national level. Shit, pick a problem at the world level and make it your problem and do something about it. That's how you now take on the next step of your progression.
I mean, isn't that what we've done here, Kip?
Totally. That's exactly what you've done. You're like, hey, I got a problem. Hey, I choose something and I'm going to tackle it. I'm going to make it mine, and I'm going to do something about it instead of being like everyone else that runs their mouths and moans and complains about how things aren't, or they shouldn't be a certain way. And instead you're doing something about it. And what does it do for you? Gives you fulfillment, and purpose and meaning.
Yep.
Yeah, and you make a difference. That's what you do.
Yeah. Right on. What's next?
All right. Man, I should have prepped on the pronunciation of this name. Raul Allen Gutierrez. As this month's book covers creating memorable moments, what is an unexpected IC-related moment that really stands out to you?
Iron Council. I mean, I've had a lot of moments that were unexpected, but now, man, we're talking about Iron.
Like an emphasis, like a profound one, like a positive. Yeah.
But specifically in the Iron Council.
Yes.
Yeah. Look, I mean, every time we promote somebody in the Iron Council, those to me are special moments.
Yeah.
Because it means a guy came in, whether it was a year ago or 5 years ago, trying to improve himself. And I'm not saying he's perfect. I'm not perfect. Nobody is, but he's trying to improve himself. He doesn't have tools. He doesn't have systems. He doesn't have frameworks. He doesn't have accountability in his life. And he's created this mediocre life for himself. And he comes in the Iron Council and he learns about a system that we've created over years and thousands of hours, tens of thousands of men trying and experimenting and testing. And he's implementing this to the point now where we feel confident that he can lead 12, 15 other guys, or a mentor who's now not only responsible for a team, now is responsible for teams. Or you, Kip, getting to do this podcast and like working to where you are right now is like to call you a friend and to see like your own growth. And that's part of what I was talking about earlier when I said you're getting really good at this. I'm like, man, that's a special thing for me, not because I want to take away from what you've done, but because I love seeing your growth. I love it.
And you created that opportunity for me.
I mean,
it was only made available through you. Yeah.
I know that isn't like one moment that's super profound, but man, all of those are instrumental. Or little messages I get. A guy might say, "Hey Ryan, I was going through a separation with my wife, and man, we've really changed things over the past 2 years, and we're welcoming our first son." Or, I was 50 pounds overweight. I was struggling with some medical stuff, and I just got done running my first marathon. Or I got married. Or, Ryan, I've had this business idea forever and I've never done anything about it. And I started and I just made my first sale. That stuff to me that's fuel. That is just rocket fuel for me. I'm like, okay, yeah, we're still doing the right. We've got a guy who, his wife was unfaithful to him, and he decided, you know what, I'm going to try to make this work. And they have a beautiful marriage now. and we could judge that, right? Guys automatically are, whether they would or wouldn't. You can look at it through your lens. But the fact of the matter is he wanted to salvage his marriage, and they
Kept
did, and they
his
have a
family
beautiful
together.
marriage now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that gets me going.
Yeah. I totally agree. There's so many of those stories, and it's funny. I don't know if you feel this way, but I think sometimes I feel like we're just talking in circles, and then you get those messages or you hear those stories, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it is providing value. You're right. It is connecting with people, and what we're doing is important. It's just sometimes you lose sight of that a little bit.
Yeah. I think one thing to also remember, just from a perspective of how is this question and answer going to serve
Yeah.
somebody else, is don't underestimate the value that you bring to the table. And I know, Kip, you and I are in a very interesting position where we're literally impacting hundreds of thousands, if not millions of men. They hear our message, they hear our voices every day. I know you've been out in public and people have recognized you. That occasionally happens with me as well. We're in a different position than a lot of guys, but I don't care if you're impacting 4 million people or the 4 people at your dinner table tonight. Don't ever underestimate the value of a story that you told about your day, or the example of getting up and going to the gym that your son saw, or you going to your game, going out of your way to sacrifice maybe some work hours or some other of your own personal hobbies and interests to make it to your son or daughter's game or recital. Don't ever underestimate that. And just put your head down and go to work. You may never in fact, you won't ever fully realize the impact that you're making, but that's not why we do it. We do it because we're men of value. We do it because it's intrinsically correct, and it's just the right thing to do.
Totally. Example of that, Asia, she did this awesome thing for our neighborhood. She put on a pickleball tournament
Oh yeah.
where like people played in different backyards, and this was a whole Saturday event. It was super fun. I got destroyed. I didn't win a single match.
Sounds
Yeah,
about sounds about
sounds
that tracks.
noble.
That sounds about
Yeah.
right.
But while we're there, our neighbor's sister showed up to support her brother. And I saw her and I was like, oh, hey, how you doing? And part of me felt like, man, I should talk to her. I haven't seen her for a while, and just, have a good conversation with her. 2 days later, she actually committed suicide.
Ooh.
And I'm not saying that's on me, like, oh, I could have or anything. But how nice would it have been just to have a strong connection and a good, solid relationship, maybe on her way out? You know what I mean? And
Mm.
those are the things that we don't know. We don't know how she was feeling that night. She seemed happy. I think she was already kind of had things planned out. And that's actually a sign for a lot of people who commit suicide, is once they're decided, they kind of have peace with the idea of it. But nonetheless, in hindsight, I'm like, dang, man, I should have reached out to her a little bit more. I should have talked to her a little bit more while she was there. And those are the things that with time and our understanding of, we don't know. Just back to what you said, you don't know when your wife's going to die. You don't know when your kids are going to die. We don't know how long we have with people. In fact, I was sharing with someone on Instagram the other day. It's like one of the best things I ever did around my relationship with my parents. And I wish I could give credit where I heard this, was don't think that you have 10 years with your parents. Because I thought, like, at their age, I probably have 5 to 10 years with them. That's not true. I had 5 to 10 summers.
Mm.
That's it. 5 to 10 summers, because I'm not visiting them every day. Right. I'm max four visits a year, maybe times 10 times 5. That's 20 visits I got. That's all I got with them. And luckily I acted upon that leading up to my dad's, before my dad started kind of dying. And I took advantage of the last couple of summers a little bit more than I normally would have done if I wasn't present to that. And so we don't have time either. It's not on our sides, and that intentionality is critical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got another little story. I mean, a lot of guys know about my own personal situation over the past year and a half now. My relationship with my older boys is strained still, and I think anybody that's gone through a divorce, regardless of the circumstances, understands and feels what that's like. And there's days where I feel like, man, I'm doing everything that I can to mend these relationships and to build relationships, and they're not strained to the point where they can't recover. I just want to be really clear on that. We still have a great
Yeah.
relationship, but there's some strain there. And there's days where I feel like, man, I'm just beating my head against the wall and nothing's happening, nothing's happening, nothing's happening. You know what? As a father, I would do that forever, even if nothing ever changed, even if it got worse. I would still do that because that's, again,
That's what you do.
intrinsically, as a father, you may have messed up, you may have done all sorts of things. That's what we do. That's intrinsically the right thing to do. And we do it for the right reason. And if you're doing things for the right reason, the motivation issue seems to dissipate.
Yeah.
The issue of, I'm just not getting anything in return seems to dissipate. You're not doing it for that. That's not the reason you're doing it. Now, if it happens, great. Obviously we want to reap the benefits of our efforts. But if it doesn't happen, man, you could go to your grave knowing that, yeah, I may have messed some things up, but man, up and after that point, I did everything I possibly could. And there's honor in that.
Totally. Totally. Matthew Keaton, what defines a leader? If a man is showing up as he should at home and or at work, is it possible for him not to be a leader?
No, I think a leader, the best definition I ever heard is a leader is an individual who can get somebody to a place they could not have imagined going on their own.
I like that.
And that could be some mental and emotional barriers. That could be physical barriers. Physical barrier, a great example of that is a coach. Coach is there to motivate, to inspire, to give you a kick in the pants when you need. And then all of a sudden you break past what you previously were and you mold yourself into this new individual who's strong and fit and lean and confident. That's a leader. A coach on the baseball field of a young man who is down on himself and beat up because he's having a bad game. And the coach walks out there and who knows what he says to his pitcher, but he says something. He strikes the last batter out to win the game. That's a leader. A young man who is with a group of buddies and they decide they want to go steal a car, break into a house, or steal something from the store. And the one young man says, you know what, guys, this isn't the right thing to do. Like, let's go down and chase the girls around instead, or go to the football game and do that. And gets those boys out of that situation into a positive, enhancing situation. That's a leader. So the leader isn't like the title. That's what a lot of people think. Well, I'm the leader. I'm the boss. I hate boss. I hate that word.
Yeah. They associate it to formal authority as,
yes.
Oh, okay, now I'm in leadership.
Yeah. And authority is needed in certain circumstances, right? For example, as a father, you need the authority of a father, that father authority. It just doesn't have the same weight if you don't have that authority. You think about the dynamic between a biological father and a stepfather. You can't tell me that you're not my dad. Well, yeah, because you don't have the same authority that a biological father would.
Totally.
So authority is important, but you get authority through two things: developing credibility, which speaks to your capability. Is this a person worth following because they can actually get me to that place? And with that comes the next component, which is influence. So if you take that scenario of the 5 young boys who are going to go steal something from the convenience store, and the 5th boy says, no, guys, that's dumb. Let's do this instead. The only reason they would listen to that guy is because he has some sort of credibility. And then that turns into influence. Now it's like, oh, you know what? Yeah, you're right. We shouldn't do that. All right, let's go to the game. He influenced them. And because he influenced them, now he has the authority to lead them because they have voluntarily given the authority to him. He becomes the leader of the group. And this goes both ways. It could be negative as well.
Yeah.
So I think generally I would associate leadership. It's amoral. Leading is amoral. I mean, you could think about some of the most horrific tragedies, even with something like Hamas,
horribleness. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that leading? Yeah. I mean, they are inspiring people to carry out things that they didn't even previously think themselves capable of. But I think inherently there's a sense of morality infused in the concept of leadership.
Totally. Totally. I can't help but reference our leadership development program, right? From within the Iron Council. One of the things that we mentioned there is our competence, skill, and ability, our character, which is, to your point, influence. And then the last is relationship, because it is possible, right, for me to be highly skilled. I have good character, but my intent with you is selfish, or my intent is different. And there's almost like this elevated way when I go like, hey, not only does Ryan have the competence and I trust him from an integrity perspective, but he actually genuinely is looking out for me as a person. Whoa, right? Like now I'm just like, I love this guy, right? Because now it's like you're in my corner, and there's some elevated benefit there. One quick example of this, and I'll make it quick. I had an employee back in the day. He was in a senior role on the team, and we're talking about his development plan. And I said, hey, I really need you to step up into a role of mentoring and coaching the other associate or more junior resources. He's like, okay, and what does that look like? When we talk through it, I had a follow-up with him in a quarter, and I said, how's that going? And he goes, Kip, man, it's not working. And I'm like, well, what's not working? He's like, well, I need the title. I need to be their leader for them to listen to me. And I told him, I said, hey, if it requires a formal authority for them to listen to you, then you don't belong in leadership. Because that tells me you have no influence with them right now. We always want those in an authoritative role, almost for it to be a no-brainer, right? Oh, hey, this guy's my boss. Oh yeah, I kind of already saw him.
He
that
already
way
was.
He was so influential in my life, and I was already listening to him because I value his input and all those other things. No one is going to go, oh, now he's my boss, now let me listen to him. That's a horrible sign, because that means that they're going to be compliant with that person in authority. They're not being influenced in a positive way. They're just being compliant from a control perspective. And so be mindful. That's a good example of that moral authority and influence versus a formal position.
Yep. I like that. That makes sense. I was just looking it up because we've talked a lot about the concept of leading before the title. I was looking at the leadership development course, but yeah, leading before the title, just lead. Cool. What's next?
Everyone has those. All right. Clayton Biden, advice on how we can play the long game, yet treat every day like a gift, blessing, and opportunity that it is, while remembering we all die one day. As they say, the grave is undefeated. Being mindful, present in the moment has helped, and reminding myself of my vision has been beneficial, but any other words of wisdom is greatly appreciated. Thank you, gentlemen, for all the valuable information and advice that you give.
I wouldn't say that this is a false dichotomy fallacy, but maybe it is.
It's
the
a
idea
tug,
of
maybe.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you're saying, hey, how do we balance the long-term game with being complacent or not complacent, excuse me, comfortable and satisfied with where we are. It's almost like you're saying you can pick one. Like you can either play the long game and not be happy or satisfied or content with what you have, or you can be aggressive and everything else and get out. You know what I'm saying? Like you have to choose one or the other. And I think the best advice that I've ever heard or figured out, maybe even along these lines, is that those two concepts are not at odds with each other. The fact that you want to have something, a better life, a better relationship, a better whatever, can translate very well into what you do today, because what you do today and tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day leads you to where you're going to be in 5 years. So you should be thinking about both. And that's why the vision is so important. So if I get up today and I'm like, you actually talked about this on last week's podcast about like, hey, I'm just going to sleep in today. And I can't remember the exact framing that you used, but you were talking about you have to lie to yourself, right? To keep yourself in bed. But if I get up and I do that, it's going to be easier to do if I affix me getting out of bed with a vision of me being the kind of man that I want to be. I did this in a very rudimentary way that I don't even know if it completely makes sense, the psychology of it maybe, but it worked. Years ago, I was drinking a ton of Monster energy drinks, and so many that I got this like twitch in my eye, but it wouldn't like go away. It was like a permanent little twitch in my eye.
Or caffeine in your eyelid.
I was like, this is, you guys know what I'm talking about, those involuntary little muscle spasms. And it would, like, you know, they happen every once in a while, but this one wouldn't go away. It was there for like days. Kind of scared me, actually. I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And I wanted to stop drinking Monster energy drinks. I convinced myself that successful men don't drink Monster energy drinks. Now, is that true? No, probably not. Doesn't have anything to do with it. I'm sure there's plenty of successful guys who drink Monster energy. Like, I'm sure of it. But I told myself and believed that a guy of my caliber, the guy that I want to be, he doesn't
need that. Yeah.
And it worked. And that's the point I'm making, is if you have a vision, that vision can be completely fabricated. It can be operate in the realm of delusion. But if you believe it, and then you start aligning your actions with that vision that you have, it's inevitable.
Yeah.
It's inevitable. It will happen. So I think you need to do, I think both are required. Long-term vision with, you know, the current action that you're taking. Kip, you might have some things to say on this. I want to pull up a resource while you do. So go ahead and share your thoughts. I'm going to try to pull this up.
Okay. Well, and I actually kind of want to bounce this idea off you. So I don't know if I'm going to disrupt you while you're looking that up.
No, go for it.
But I find this interesting, and I'm maybe a little bit of a rat hole here, but let me try this out. I think sometimes we take goals and we put the weight on the outcome. And so we grind it out, right? It's like, okay, I'm going to grind this out. I'm going to grind. And then by doing all this work, I'm going to get this outcome that's going to make things better. And then I'll have a better relationship with my spouse, or then my relationship with my kids will be better, or then I'll be comfortable and I'll have all this money or whatever. And I think we sometimes put too much weight in the outcome and fail to realize that the majority of happiness and fulfillment is in the present state of being towards the vision itself. And I think that comes into play into Clayton's question, because we play the long game, and it's like the long game kind of implies that when the game's over, then, right, then I'll be satisfied. Then I'll be, when reality, it's like the biggest benefit is enjoying the journey and how we show up every day more than the necessarily outcome itself. And so for me, I have to be careful of that, because I put too much weight in regards to how things should be or what will happen when I reach. And I forget to live in the moment. I forget to enjoy what I have right now. And it kind of goes back to what you're saying earlier. It's like, well, what does that look like, Kip? It looks like being whole, complete, and living the day to the fullest today. Having a good workout. Why? So I can lose a lot of weight? Sure. But did I feel good just having the workout? I did. Right? Did I listen to myself? Was I in integrity? Did I show up powerfully as a husband today? I did, regardless of the outcome. And I think we find peace and fulfillment in just how we're constantly showing up. So be careful not to delay that happiness or delay that satisfaction to the circumstance, and have it be rooted in the present. Now, I say all that with a little bit of hesitant, right? Because I'm a little fearful too. It's like, okay, well then do we not make goals, Kip? Do we not, have plans? And I don't think that's true, but we just be careful how much weight we put on the outcome versus the process.
Yeah. I think this goes along with what you're saying, is if everything about it is miserable, why are you doing it?
Yeah, like, exactly.
I think about this with guys that are in jobs that they hate, they absolutely despise. And they're like, well, I got 20 years in, so I'll just keep going. That's not a good reason to do anything that you hate. Because you've been doing it for a long time, you've resigned your life to continuing to do it that way. That seems silly, to put it mildly. And this goes back to what you were saying, is life is so short. Might as well do things that you enjoy doing. I mean, I know we have responsibilities, but I think I'm not going to say it's easy, but I think there's all sorts of ways that you can fulfill responsibilities and have fun while you're doing it. I actually was going to tell you, because you were talking about Asia with pickleball, I have a new project that I'm going to share and unveil to the world here before too long with regards to pickleball,
Oh, really?
purely because it's fun. I'm gonna make some money doing it because I know I can, and
Yeah.
I want to generate a little additional revenue, but it's fun, like it's enjoyable.
Yeah.
So
Why not?
that's what we should do. Like I can fulfill responsibilities and have fun in the process.
Totally. Totally. I had one last thought, and hopefully he doesn't mind this. He won't mind. He's a good enough friend of ours. But I had this conversation with Jenkins the other day.
Mm-hmm.
When we were in high school, I really saw him as an individual that would be the funnest dad ever. That's how I envisioned him, because he's so goofy and he's always happy and he's always just like so great to be around. And I had a conversation with him last week and he said, I don't bring that to being a dad.
Mm.
And he's rigid and he's processed and he's judgmental and these other rigid ways of being a dad. And his greatest talent is enjoyment and fun, but he's not bringing that to the table of fatherhood. Right? What a shame. And how great of an experience that would be to have that version be a dad versus the dad that's always about business,
Right.
and
Right.
I'm not saying that to judge Matt, because I'm the same way, right? It's like, and I share this story probably too often, but like Asia once told me, she's like, Kip, you can get all these things done. It's really great, but your kids don't give a crap if you're the kind of person that gets there by being miserable. They don't
Mm-hmm.
want to follow you,
Yeah.
so sure. Does the house need to get clean? Sure. Yeah, it does. But guess what? Could I turn on the music and have fun with it? I certainly could. Could I have fun, and could we progress today and being enjoyable? And the answer is yes.
No. Oh, sorry. Yes.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And yeah, you were going to pull up a resource.
Yeah, I couldn't find it.
Oh,
Sorry, guys.
I
No,
was
I
giving
think
you time, Matt. I was rambling.
No, I think in my interview with John Deloney several weeks ago, I think if I remember correctly, we talked about balancing the idea of ambition and contentment. So you can go back and listen to that one. I'm pretty sure we talked about it in that episode.
Okay, excellent. All right. So, question from Jay, one of our leaders within the Iron Council, complete stud, by the way.
Actually, hold on. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
It was Michael Easter. I know it was Michael. It was that interview I did on October 10th with Michael Easter. We talked about that question: ambitious goal setting versus being content and satisfied with where you are. It was with Michael Easter. Okay, back to Jay.
Okay, so Jay's question is good enough ever good enough? Kind of in the spirit of the same question. Does the constant need to be able to do better ever become an exercise in futility, or even hold us back from living in the moment and actually moving forward? Just to be clear, I do not mean settling. I mean living our best life and experiencing the positive moments. Do we feel like we've answered Jay's question, or is there anything you would add?
I think there might be a little bit of difference here. Like I feel like if I'm going to do something, I want to be exceptional at it.
Yeah.
And I also feel like if I'm not interested in being exceptional at it, then I just won't do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's okay. I don't have to do everything that you do. I don't have to do everything that my neighbor does. I don't have to do it the same way that other people do it. I'm also trying to work on giving myself permission to just experiment without any expectation of anything in return.
That's hard, but I
it is hard
relate to that. Yeah.
It's like, okay, maybe you want to pick up a new hobby or a new activity or a new interest or maybe a new regiment with your physical fitness, or maybe it's a new book even. And you start reading the book and you're like, I don't like this book. Put the damn book down. Pick up, there's literally millions of other books that you can read. Maybe you're watching a movie, you're like, this movie's lame. Change the movie. Right? Or you're in this new training regiment and you're like, you know what? This is miserable, but I don't want to quit. No, quit, actually. Quit doing that. There's 1,000 other things that you could do that would be better for you, that would engage your mind and your heart and your soul. So do that. So I think maybe in a roundabout way, to Jay's point, if it's just not something that speaks to you or calls to you, it's okay to let go of a few things. It's okay not to do that. It's okay to not be interested in what your brother might be interested in.
Yeah.
And then just giving yourself permission to dabble. I'm going to dabble in this, and you're going to hear all these motivational podcasts like, don't go all the way in. No, some things I will, other things I just want to dabble. That's all I want to do. And I'm okay with it. Like, I'm totally okay with it. And I think
Yeah.
there's some, this is hard for me to talk about just because I'm not good at it and it's something I'm working on. But I think there's just some grace in that of like, yeah, I'm not going to be the best at that. And that's okay. I still have fun doing it.
Totally. Totally. Well, and I think the value of realizing the impact is beneficial to me. Like this is something that I've struggled with really around jujitsu actually in my past, where I'm like, I want to be the best at that. Right. I hate not winning in competitions, and I always want to be first. And I really struggled with that balance of like, yeah, but Kip, are you willing to pay the price?
Mm.
And the answer was always like, no. Like I want to keep progressing in my career and be okay at jujitsu. And I'm okay with that. But if I constantly went like, oh, I want to be the best at that, or I want to be at best, then what ends up happening is I'm saying yes to too many things, and I'll not be the best at any of them because I'm not getting clear on the price that is going to be paid to pull that off. And so
Right.
it's kind of, we have to be realistic, right, of what that's going to require and deal in reality.
I have another example that just to drive home that point, I think, is one thing that I've been adamant. If you know and follow this podcast, I hate to cook.
Yeah.
I hate it. And people are like, oh, it's because you're not doing it right. No, it's because I hate it. Not because I'm not doing it right.
Totally.
And given my current circumstances, much of which are my own doing, I've had to learn how to cook because I'm not going to take my kids to McDonald's every night when they're with me. That ain't going to work either. So I'm starting to cook a little. And I have people like, oh, try this recipe and try that and do that. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that because I don't want to take a bunch of time. I'm cooking, and I've actually found some joy in it. So I'm going to be clear on that. I found some joy in actually learning how to cook. I'm never going to be Gordon Ramsay, but I'm not interested in it. And I'm never going to take your recipe that you send to me and you're like, try this and grocery shop for this and buy all this bullshit. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to. But I can make a decent enough meal that my kids will eat it with a smile on their face and then go to bed full. Yeah. And that's good enough for me right now. So yeah, I think there's all sorts of places where doing what is appropriate for you is completely fine.
So Ryan, you last comment on the podcast, we've talked about the analogy of you don't know how to summit a peak sometimes until we get over a ridge, because we don't have all the information, and the path looks different once we put in the reps. Regarding Jay's conversation or his question, how do you think that correlates too? Because sometimes I think we say the best or our expectations of good is based upon a limited knowledge of things.
Yeah. And I think,
and there's an element to that, right?
Yeah, I think that requires a level of honesty with yourself, because it would be easy. So let me give you an example. You're on this hike and it's hard, it's miserable, you're not enjoying it. Do you stop and turn around, or do you keep going? I think it'd be easy to convince ourselves that it's probably not worth it. Let's just turn around. Yeah. But if you're being honest with yourself, you know why you're quitting. Is it you're quitting because you're no longer interested? And it might be that you're no longer interested in something. And if you aren't, then it's okay to quit and turn around, or maybe go on a different hike. But if your heart's still in it, you're still interested, there's still some level of curiosity, some ambition in it, it's just hard. To me, that curiosity is enough to keep me going.
Yeah.
If I'm on that hike and I'm like, this is hard, I think I should turn around, but I'm like, but I really want to see what's over there. That's the phrase that wins. Like, I really want to see. That means you're still in it. It's just hard.
Yeah. Totally.
But so you just have to be honest. Are you quitting and not doing that thing anymore? Like your job. Are you quitting because your boss made you feel horrible today, and so you're quitting and throwing in the towel on something you love? Or was it just kind of a shitty day and just deal with it and, come back and tomorrow will be better? Yeah. But that requires some honesty on your part.
Yeah. Is it a pivot or is it a tap out? Right. Which one are you doing?
Yeah. Good point. Yeah, for sure. Let's take one more, Kip.
All right. Justin Legan Kane Brand new member of the Iron Council, by the way.
Nice.
My
Glad he's here.
boss, a guy I've known for 20 years, is not good at his job. There are tasks that he's good at, but as a leader of our team, his actions are like a wet blanket. I came in 5 months ago to fix the office. I was told by my leadership to unleash the beast. That being said, I've increased morale, teamwork, revenue. It soon became apparent that the problem in my office isn't middle managers, but at the head of the table. He isn't leading. He won't make a decision. He hasn't trained me or any other team members. My question is this: do I sit down with him and tell him it isn't cutting the mustard? Or do I go to the guy who hired me, who is 3 levels above? Our VP has told me he should have closed the office 3 years ago, but he hired this manager and has a soft spot for him. I want the team to be successful, but every time we get step ahead, my boss slaps them back down over petty things. Looking for your advice. Sorry for the background info, but I think it's necessary for your perspective.
So what you're talking about right now is what pirates would call mutiny. And if you're going to start a mutiny, you better win.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you're dead. So that's what you need to evaluate. Do you have enough influence? Do you have enough credibility? Do you have enough sway? Do you have enough capability? Do you have a good enough relationship with whoever's next up the echelon of leadership to be able to go to that person and have that person take you seriously? Because if not, you're starting a mutiny that's not going to turn out well for you.
Yeah.
So I would hedge my bets first by going to your boss. And I probably wouldn't go to your boss and say, hey, what you're doing is not cutting it, or whatever the terminology you used.
Not cutting the mustard.
But I would identify some problems with the dynamic without saying it's his problem.
Yeah.
And then offer a few solutions like, hey, team morale seems to be low. And I think it has to do with the speed at which we're implementing things. And here's a couple of examples of that. What if I did X, Y, and Z? He might actually be really appreciative of that. He might be looking for that. He might, you say he's the leader, but he's not. Maybe you're the leader, to our point earlier. You just don't have the title yet.
Yeah.
And so I would take it from the bottom up. This is chain of command type stuff. Always start with where you are, up one rung of the ladder. Always one rung, not two. Don't get greedy.
Yeah.
One rung at a time. If it doesn't get solved, then you might need to go to the next rung, but you better be certain that if you start a mutiny, you're going to win the thing.
Totally.
Or you have a backup plan, meaning if you get canned, I hope you've got another job lined up, because you might get yourself canned by doing it that way. Totally. And it might be okay, but start hedging now. Talk to your current quote unquote leader in a way that's respectful, designed to help him, support him, and then start networking and doing other things so you can build other relationships and create other opportunities should this go south.
Yeah. And I like what you said. Don't go to him with you don't cut the mustard. And the reason why it doesn't work.
Well, he's your boss. He's going to say, you don't cut it, you're fired.
Yeah. No one acts well to that.
Right.
So
right.
Everyone will always act well to their ideas, what they come up with, and what helps them win. So approach it to strategies of, hey, Ryan, I have some ideas. Here's some pitfalls that I see on the team. Here's some strategy that we could get better performance and improve what we're doing for the organization. And here's some thoughts that I have. Maybe we can pivot as a leadership team, maybe delegate authority better than we are today. Like whatever that is, it's not about him. Make it about the team and what you can do to help him win. And then let him, through agency and through freedom, see how that fits. And you're going to get way better traction from that perspective than the mindset that you have today, that he's the problem. Mark my word, influence does not start from the mindset of a person's the problem. Good influence with someone always is rooted in the mindset of they're not the problem, and that they just need the reps, or they have some gaps and they don't realize it or whatever. and have a strong relationship with them and then get into correction. Got to be very careful on this,
Yeah.
because the minute we approach something as they're the problem, all your actions are just manipulative. They're all good. People's going to taste your intent, and
Yeah.
it tastes disgusting when you know someone's just trying to manipulate you and they think you're the problem. You know it. We all know it when it
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah. I mean, I think what you're talking about, you're again, to go to a higher up, which I'm not saying you should not do. I'm just saying consider it.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this a little bit more. You're moving from the realm of your current occupation into the game of politics. You're now you're if you do that, you're now playing a different game, and you better be aware of the rules to that game before you start playing.
Yeah. That's solid.
Cool. Let's wrap it up, Kip.
All right. So a couple of things, call to actions. Obviously, Iron Council's closed, but to join us in our Battle Ready program to get ready for the end of the year so you can start 2024 with us, go to orderman.com/battle ready. And of course, you can connect with Mr. Mickler on the socials on X and Instagram at Ryan Mickler. Any updates on store stuff?
We've got a few new hoodies coming in. I'm going to have those available in the next couple of days. So as of the release of this podcast, you know what? I'll just go ahead and say, as of the release of this podcast, we're doing a pre-order on them because it's a little bit of delay in getting them to us. I thought they'd be here sooner. We're going to do a pre-order on them. I'll have images and pictures. They're actually really rad. They're cool. So those are available. And then the only other thing I want to say is I just want to give a shout out to my friends, a couple of friends. They are show sponsors, but they're friends of mine. And what they're doing is incredible stuff.
It's awesome.
Made in America, made in America products, services. They're hiring Americans. They're fixing supply chains. So we have Origin USA. We're coming up in the hunting season. They've got an incredible hunt lineup. I've got my stuff ready to go for a hunt I've got in 2 weeks. That's at originusa.com. You can use the code ORDER at checkout if you're going to buy some new camo and save some money. And then the other one, again, 100% made in America out of Frenchtown, Montana, montanaknifecompany.com. Check out their knives, check out their hoodies, their gear, their swag. And that can be found at montanaknifecompany.com and use the code Order of Man over there. So look, you guys listening, tuning in, asking questions, being part of the Iron Council, buying shirts, coming to events, all that stuff is a big support. These guys are also a big support. I want to support them. They support me. And I hope that you'll support them too. That's it.
And I read some, I think last week, official sponsor of the UFC.
Origin.
Is Origin. Yeah, super
right.
cool move on their part.
Yeah, they're doing great things. All right, Kip. Well, I appreciate you. And guys, I appreciate the great questions. Hopefully we gave you some things to consider. And then we'll be back on Friday for our Friday field notes. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.